My favorite season, fall, is upon us. The leaves are changing colors, the temperatures are dropping, Halloween is just around the corner, and with that in mind, we want to make sure that your travels become treats and not tricks.
He's a TA and he's gonna talk. Let's join Matt for today's TA Talk.
Hey, happy travelers, and welcome back to the home office for this installment of the TA Talk. So what do I mean when I say that we want to make your travels treats and not tricks? I'm talking about how you can actually do that. A lot of the other videos I do are dedicated to how I can help do that as a travel agent, give you advice and all those different things. But for this video, I actually want to talk about what you can do in terms of managing and adjusting your expectations when it comes to your vacation, when it comes to your own personal travel. And let me just say this right off the top. It is okay when things go wrong to get upset about them or, have issues if things aren't going well on your vacation. Obviously, we get to travel all of the time, so I don't want it to sound like, oh, it's easy for you to say you get to go all the time. That is true, 100%. But I have been seeing this both as a travel agent for years now and when I worked at Walt Disney World for several years as well, that people would have sometimes their vacation ruined or their day thrown off completely, or they would let themselves get really down because of something that happened they didn't like, and it just tended to escalate inside of their head, and it would cause them to blow up. So that's what we don't want, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. How to manage and maybe even adjust your expectations going into a trip, going into your personal travels, so that you do not have those problems come up. Now, I get it. A lot of people have a lot of high expectations for vacation and travel because you're spending your hard-earned money on it. You are taking your time off of work so that you can go and travel. You're putting a lot of time and effort and thought into planning this vacation before you ever step foot towards going on it. So there's a lot riding on it, and I totally understand that. The problem that I see it, and like I said, I've seen it for years now, is that I think people kind of misconstrue it to where time off and money spent on a vacation equals perfection. And that becomes the expectation, perfection. Nothing can go wrong. It's supposed to be the perfect day. But things are gonna get in your way. It's just bound to happen. And that's okay, as long as we don't let that become a landslide that drags you down. So even if you think about living in the real world day to day, right? Maybe your coffee order was wrong, maybe the printer's out of ink, things like that happen, but your day isn't ruined because things like that happen, right? But they're constantly happening. Well, the same is going to happen when you're traveling and on vacation, because after all, you're not leaving the real world. You're still in it, regardless of how a cruise line or an all-inclusive resort or a theme park company might make you feel like you're in a fantasy land. You are still interacting with real people. There are still mechanical issues that can come up. Weather is always a big factor that can come into play. The list goes on and on. Now, that's not to say that there won't be things that happen that aren't legitimate complaints, things that are really bad, things that should not have happened from the vendor's perspective, or things that might have gone wrong, a terrible tragedy, things like that. There will always be issues that are legitimate complaints, legitimate things to even become devastated about. Hopefully that does not happen. And if those things do, if there is something that the cruise line has done very, very wrong, of course it's okay to get upset about that. And of course it's okay to expect them to remedy that, to either reimburse you or kind of come up with some other way to make that whole and put you back to where you were. And that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm just talking about other things, with the expectations, again, becoming perfection. And when things slide off of that, it tends to ruin people's day and then ruin their vacation. The best parallel that I can draw for this is what we actually talk about a lot with being a sports fan. As you can see, I am one. And when you are a sports fan, you become very passionate about that. And when you're watching the game and it goes your way, your team wins, it's pure exuberance. You're so joyful, you're so happy. And when your team loses, you're not. You're angry, you're upset, you're devastated, whatever it is. But whenever you get involved or invested in something that you cannot completely control, that is when things can become dicey. And so that's kind of the parallel there. You can't control how your team plays. So you kind of have to just accept the reality of it. Sure, you can get excited. You can be over the top. You can also become disappointed. You can be sad or angry when your team loses. But there has to be a line that you have to draw with that. You have to go into that sporting event knowing that your team might lose. And that's exactly what you need to do as well with your travels and with your vacation. You have to go into it saying it might rain today, or the bus might be late, or the food in the dining room wasn't that great tonight. Again, some things are things that you surely can talk to the staff about or try to get remedied or whatever, but we want to just nip it in the bud for becoming a snowball that starts to roll and become bigger and bigger and bigger to where your whole 3-day cruise or your whole week-long trip is ruined. That's what we do not want. So I think that's kind of the first part of the equation, which is managing expectations, right? What you are picturing in your head is going to be your trip or your vacation, and when things come up, what are you doing? That's a little bit adjusting too. You're adjusting on the fly, but you're not adjusting your expectations so much at that point. You have your expectations already, so we need to manage those when things come up. So I think some of the best advice for that is honestly just very simplistic things. Just trying to have a minute to breathe, just trying to have a minute to decompress. A lot of times when an issue comes up, people want to address it right away. They need it handled right away, and I totally get that. There's nothing worse than that purgatory moment where you don't know what's happening, but just try to take a moment, try to calm down, try to breathe, try to gather your thoughts, and then act accordingly. Also, I would recommend that if there is a situation that has arisen that is stressing you out, to try to remove yourself from it if at all possible. Of course, there are examples where that's not going to be possible, but if it is, I think that's a good idea. I think it's a really good idea to just kind of step away from things, cool off, come back whenever you're ready for it. And as cliche as it may sound, I honestly think the best advice I can give in this regard is to try to see the big picture. Okay, because it really is the truth of the matter. If you are on a week-long cruise and on boarding day you get on the ship and there's just things that you're not liking, whatever it may be. Maybe there was a line at security. Maybe there was a delay getting on the ship because the last cruise was delayed with disembarkation. Maybe it's raining. Who knows? There could be a myriad of things there that could be bothering you, and that's okay. Like I said, things are going to happen. So that's number one. You're going in knowing things are going to happen. When those things do happen, you have to ask yourself, what exactly is the situation here? What impact does it have on me and my travel party and this trip? Because if you can take a minute to calm down and then honestly answer that question, I think most times you'll find that it isn't as big of a deal as you may have originally thought. We're all guilty of that. I don't want to sound like I'm trying to, high horse you here. No. I can get upset, believe me. But just trying to give the best advice I can here. I think if, let's say on boarding day it is raining. Think about that. It's a week-long cruise. Day 1, it's raining. Day 2, it might be beautiful and sunny. You still have several days left of that cruise. You don't want to put yourself behind the 8 ball. That's what I'm trying to get at here. You don't want to create a situation where you are so upset and so stressed that this is not going perfect and not going exactly the way you envisioned before you left, and your money and your time are all being wasted to where now you can't even enjoy the rest of day number 1, let alone day 2 or 3 or 4. That is not what you want. Sometimes you're going to have to approach it almost with a sunk cost mindset. That incident has happened and that time is gone. Or we had to pay extra for a cab because the shuttle wasn't going or whatever. That money is gone. I'm not saying that that's not a problem or something you shouldn't be upset about. But again, at that moment in time, it's done. I usually don't like to try to defer things or procrastinate or anything like that. But I think sometimes when you're traveling and you're on your personal vacation, that might be a good idea to just say, okay, right now, let's enjoy this as much as we can, and we'll pick up the pieces when we're back home. Easier said than done, for sure, but I do think that's probably the best advice that I can give someone who might be encountering stress during their trip. But now the actual meat of this discussion that I wanted to have, the bigger point I wanted to make today, is adjusting expectations. And this is really going to come into play with the cruise industry at large right now. Because if you are online a lot, if you're on different forums or different social media sites, you might see, I don't want to say a lot of negativity around cruising, but what seems to be a bit more than there has in the past. And a lot of it is centered around things changing. Things are not the way they used to be. Things might be different. To a lot of people, some standards are lower than they used to be. And so that's what's causing a lot of people to become upset. And so that's where adjusting expectations is going to come into play. You need to get in your mind before you even book the cruise or go on the cruise that things might be different on this cruise, your upcoming cruise, next year's cruise, versus cruises that you have taken in the past. And this is what I have dubbed the post-COVID shutdown reaction. Post. Why post? Okay, my theory here is that post-COVID shutdown, of course, everyone knows the cruise industry was shut down for what, 15, 16 months, something like that. No cruising at all, which is why there has been such fluctuation and such changes. Of course, cruise lines lost money, tons of it, hand over fist, dollars out the door that they are trying to recoup because they couldn't operate for all of that time. Now, what happened post-COVID shutdown to me was when everyone was just so excited to be able to travel again, us included, right? It was just, pure bliss that we could actually go on a cruise again. We were just happy to be on a cruise ship. We were happy to be out at sea. We were loving it, right? Now we're post-COVID shutdown. And what I think that is where people are now, they've gotten that out of the way. So now they're back in the flow of it. They've lost that overall exuberance. The honeymoon period is over, maybe is a better way to put it. And the expectations have come flooding back. But that has been met with the prices rising. And when prices rise, expectations tend to rise, which is logical, completely, in a vacuum. So I think that's kind of what's going on here, is that people already had their expectations back, maybe even a little higher because it had been so long since they had had a real cruise, and now they were getting back to real cruising, but now the money was coming in higher, the prices were higher, things cost more, maybe you were getting less, maybe there were cutbacks depending on what the cruise line was, on their service or their food quality or whatever it may have been. So again, you have raised expectations, raised prices, and what that tends to leave is people feeling disappointed. Now, I am not saying that you should just accept the prices are higher and you should just be happy to go on a cruise and no matter what they give you, you should just take it. I do not want it to sound like that because I certainly do not believe that. But I think if we're being realistic, what we want to do is have a mindset of things before we ever get on that trip, because once we're on that trip, things are going to hit us a lot harder. So before you even book, start right now telling yourself that the prices of cruises are higher than they used to be. And that probably is not going to change. Now, maybe it will at some point. We all know supply and demand. Prices can fluctuate. But as of right now, they are higher. And maybe, it's kind of subjective, so it's hard to definitively say, maybe some things are not to the standard that they used to be, or maybe some things are different than they used to be. And so I think you just have to decide, are you okay with that? And if you are, excellent. I think a lot of people still are. There's still so many great things about cruising, even if you are paying more for it. I think if you're okay with that, and if you can acknowledge that these cruise lines were hit very, very hard, maybe harder than most businesses during the pandemic, and they are recuperating from that, then you're good to go. If you're not okay with that, then I think you might want to reconsider things so that you do not become disappointed. I have talked to people who said, if I'm going to drop this money on the cruise, I want it to be here where it always was. And the fact of the matter is that it may not be. So if you have any hesitation with that, you might want to reconsider. Now, one little dovetail off of that, I have had some people mention to me, I don't know if we want to go on a cruise right now. We kind of heard maybe it's not a good time to cruise. We were told that we should go to Sandals instead. Or we were thinking that we're going to do a trip to the theme parks instead. Okay, that's fine and well. And if you want to go to Sandals, I'll be more than happy to book you for it. Trust me on that. But again, having expectations in mind. Sandals is pricey. Now, we did the breakdown on one of the TA talks, kind of comparing Sandals and a cruise, and you could see where they might be closer than you originally think. But as we showed in that video, typically starting out, Sandals is going to be higher than a cruise, okay? Then you got to figure out flights and getting to the island, all that stuff. So I don't know, if you didn't really have an interest in going to Sandals or beaches or an all-inclusive resort before, I don't think now is the time to shift to that. I don't think you're going to be like, oh, wow, this is so much better than what a cruise has become. I think what you probably loved about cruising is still very close to that. It's maybe 90% of what it was. And that, though, is still going to be closer and a better experience for you than now switching completely to an all-inclusive resort if you're not used to doing that. So that's my one recommendation with that. But again, if you want to book it, I won't say anything but yes. The other one is the theme parks. And the fact of the matter is, with theme parks, talking, of course, Walt Disney World, Disneyland, Universal Studios, Orlando, and Hollywood, all those different ones, there's so many. The prices of theme parks are higher than they've ever been as well. And they are super crowded as well. Trust me, as a Florida resident and an annual pass holder to the main theme parks in Orlando, these places have gotten quite busy. And you'll hear a lot of the same kind of complaints, honestly, if you're online about going to theme parks right now that you would with cruising. It's just that adjustment period coming out of the pandemic and trying to get back on track to things. So, all in all, what I'm saying is, if you're looking to go on a cruise, as long as you don't have an expectation it's going to be so much better than it used to be, and maybe it's going to be a little bit different. I hesitate to even say less, personally. We've had fantastic cruises this year. So I wouldn't say that, but other people have. Even if you want to say a little bit less or maybe just different, as long as you can accept that and go in with that mindset and that you're going to have to pay more for it now than you used to, you'll be good to go. Go on the cruise, have a great time. If not, you might want to reconsider things, but I don't think just jumping ship, to theme parks or an all-inclusive resort is necessarily the answer either. After all, cruises have always been considered the best value vacation. That's the main reason that they are so popular. So even if the prices have gone up, even if you think the service or the quality of the food or the entertainment or whatever has gone down, the fact of the matter is that it's still probably overall the best value vacation that you can get, because it was such a chasm between that and other vendors and other items that you could do, that even if the gap has shrunk, it's still probably the leader by a wide margin. And with that said, that's going to complete the main segment. Now let's go on to our mailbag. Spider-Man Potato Head swinging in with this week's question. Be sure to leave any questions, inquiries you may have for me on the TA Talk here in the comments section, or send them to us on Instagram or another video, but this is probably the best way. Just comment down below, or if you have any suggestions for future TA Talk video topics. Random poll here. We restocked our questions. Question of the week for this TA Talk comes from Desiree Dufresne on YouTube. Can you book the cruise and excursions? And I'm assuming this means me as a travel agent if you partner with us. And the answer is technically yes. So of course we will help book you on the cruise. That's one of the main parts of our job. Now the excursions, I like to point this out because a lot of people say, I don't want to lose control. You really don't. So if you book a Royal Caribbean cruise with us, once you're booked, you can log into your Royal Caribbean account, pull up your reservation, and there's My Royal Cruise, where you can book all of your excursions and your dining packages and your drink packages and Wi-Fi and all that good stuff. That doesn't change. You still have access to that. Now, if you need us to assist you or you have questions about that, of course, that's what we're here for. The easiest way for it to actually be done is for you just to log on and book that, but we can help through that process. We also have a third-party company with cruise planners called Shore Excursions Group, and you can book those shore excursions through us as well, and that'll be put right under your reservation. We can help set that up and get those managed. So, long story short, yes, we can assist with both. All right, friends, that is going to do it for me in this installment of the TA Talk. As always, thank you for joining me. I greatly appreciate it. And as always, I will remind you that we are travel agents. Our services are completely free, no charges or fees or costs whatsoever. And you will never pay a single cent more to book with us than you would booking direct on your own. So feel free to reach out via that travel agent information you can find in the description of this video if you're interested in booking a cruise or an all-inclusive resort stay at Sandals or Beaches. And if you've booked either one of those recently, you may be able to transfer them to our agency for free, and then we can assist you the rest of the way. So either way, we hope we will hear from you soon. Once again, thank you for joining me for today's video, but I am signing off. I will see you in the next TA Talk, but until then, you know what it says. Happy travels!